So this is a topic that people have very strong feelings about in communities of all kinds, spiritual and otherwise. Culturally too, we are, especially in the West, sort of averse to this idea of devotion to, to other, outside of maybe the family structure, romantic context. And yet, in any kind of student-teacher relationship, whether it be something more Western, like artistic mentorship or Alexander technique, Feldenkrais, or obviously in an Eastern contemplative sense of a spiritual teacher, this idea of, do I have to be devoted? Like, what does that look like? Does it have to look the same for all people? And I would say for the past 8 years, I've really lived that question. Does it have to look like showing up at a certain place and bending the knee in a very particular physical form to mean something, to have that transformational effect on myself, my consciousness, the way that it might for the next person or it might not for the other person? This is something I've struggled with. I have asked various sources and people whom I deeply respect from various traditions, and not just traditions, like places in my life, people in my life of all different backgrounds, because I'm curious and I'm interested, because you kind of look at who someone is and then you can kind of re-engineer, well, what made them that way? And obviously the variables are many and it's not just one thing, but it's interesting to hear, and there's a wide array of feeling and opinions on it, right? And I was speaking with a student this summer who herself was asking me, well, really, what is devotion? And do I have to be devoted in this way? Or what does that mean? And I started responding in sort of a typical Holly way, where it was a long, circuitous, somewhat verbose, mismusing, because economy of language does not come easy to me, but also because it's something that I am still trying to work out, if I'm being really truthful, because I have always felt deeply, deeply devoted to God, to my, God in the sense of self-actualization, God in the sense of self, not Judeo-Christian or, deity God. But beyond that, I've always been, very spiritually devoted and devoted to so many practices in my life, waking up and vocalizing every day, my yoga practice, my other physical practices, a writing practice, Alexander technique is an incredible, you could be practicing it all day, every day, 24/7 to the extent and depth that you want to because of the nature of the technique. And there were many years where I was pretty close to that. When I wasn't sleeping, I was engaged with the work in some way. In speaking to her and trying to give her something of a cogent answer, I realized my life is devotion. And I really think that is the end result of any spiritual or artistic training, which is to realize that you're devoted to it all, because in Vedanta, but many philosophies too, it's all extended self. It is all my very self. So how can I not be devoted to that? I'm just, with more awareness comes more realization that everything is an opportunity for devotion. And so yes, in the beginning, or for certain people or certain parts in our life, it's very relevant to have that devotion be a specific human with a face and a name and a personality whom we can have direct contact with, verbally, spiritually, physically. Because as humans, it's generally easier to conceive of devotion to someone, right? We love our family, we love our friends, we love our partners, we love our children. And so we always think of devotion as this emotional exchange. But to think of, and yes, through self-care, or if you're an artist, or a creative, or you're an academic, or you've got something to which you have applied yourself over a long period of life, you certainly know about devotion. You might not use that term, but you are deeply devoted to showing up every day and doing the research and writing the papers. And, people can say, oh, well, that's not the same as, bowing down to someone or thing. And maybe it's not if you haven't done certain other adjunct work, or you haven't had certain experiences, or you don't have some kind of organizing principle technique in your life for that Gnostic investigation into yourself. But I think ultimately the period of time when you are so devoted to the human form, and Vedanta actually teaches this. My teacher actually holds that you fall in love with the beauty of the world. This is that idea of God consciousness. You fall in love with seeing God in all things, in the mountain, in the flower, in the smell of the jasmine that's in the air, or the fruit that's blooming in the spring. You fall in love with all of that, that it becomes less about what the physical human teacher says, and it becomes more about what that personalized relationship to God, to self, is communicating with you in a very unique and idiosyncratic and designed for you kind of way. And that's what trains you and flips you in many years later, for most cases, into full-blown unity or full-blown realization, as they say. And so, yeah, if you're questioning devotion, if you are wary of cultish dynamics, or there hasn't been someone in your life to whom you feel utterly devoted without question, and then that kind of love, it may appear later. It's not about, you don't have to make it an anxious or laden thing to find that person. I bet that there is something in your life to which you are deeply devoted, and if there isn't, the whole point is that you can find that. You can cultivate a meditation practice, and from there, not only will the practice itself be devotional to self, to the teacher who taught you on a practical level, to the greater masters of the tradition from which they descend, whatever, but it might also provide you the clarity to see all the other things in your life to which you either already are or wish to be devoted to. Raising children, they always say relationship is one of the greatest spiritual teachers, because you are forced to confront yourself, all aspects of yourself, in relationship to another. And it's not just the pretty parts that you present to them or the parts of you that get along organically. It's the all of you, the warts, the beauty, the difficulty, and the bliss. So, there's a quote from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the founder of Transcendental Meditation, from, who's my teacher, Tom Knoll, spent many years with. And I love this quote. He says, "We only leave this world with two things: the vibration we've achieved in our life and the love we've given to others. The two are really one and the same." And when we think about the practice, whether it's artistic or otherwise, or meditative, that's the incubator, so to speak, for that vibration, right? To elevate the vibration or the expansion of self. And then the creative disciplines, or just the devoted way in which we live our lives to children, to our job, to our community, to a guru maybe, that's the love we give, right? And everything then becomes, increasingly with greater awareness, becomes love. So yeah, it can be a question, and I think it's a very necessary question for anyone on that spiritual self-actualizing path, to not only wonder what is devotion, but to be in constant communication with the form that devotion is taking, because ultimately all life is devotion, but it can look different at different points in time.